Folks, welcome to the Agency Action Show. My name is Kurt Von Anen. I'm here with my awesome co-host Toby Crines. It's been a heck of a week. It's been a heck of a 2 weeks, but I'm really glad to be able to be here and share the screen with Toby again. Toby, how are you today?
Great, Kurt. So I had this question. The idea is AI is causing many businesses to rethink many things. And a lot of people, when it comes time to rethink, especially when you see money getting tighter, like even if it's not hitting you yet, you can see that on the horizon that things are changing. And what that means for businesses, let's tighten our belts a little bit. And so there's a lot of talk right now in the world, in business land, about simplifying instead of scaling, or scale and simplify. There's a whole thing in the SaaS world that seats are no longer a pricing option, for example. And think of how that's going to disrupt businesses. But as like an agency that builds websites and related marketing services, how do you decide when to cut services versus add services, or maybe streamline services? How do you approach that type of question?
This is more than just a question that you've asked, Toby. This is like a whole conversation by itself. I'm going through this right now. And you mentioned AI, so I'm just going to be really transparent here. I have, as part of my process, I've got this one credit card with a fair amount of balance that is able to be put on it, and I just started putting like this software, that all my plug-in up, like all my subscriptions go on this card, right? And then periodically, I just monitor the card and pay the dang thing off, and it rolls over again, right? But it's because you know as well as I do, you have to have a funding method that's consistent and reliable so that you don't have any lapses or gaps or forget about something, right? I checked the balance on that card 2 weeks ago, and it was a big gulp moment because it was like, how much of this crud have I signed up for? How much am I actually using? How much of this am I actually getting a return on investment with the client work that we're bringing in? Because whatever I'm investing in, I have to be bringing in revenue for that. And so I think your question is very timely, at least for me, because I've had to look at this and go, am I going to continue to learn, develop, and be at the front of this conversation forever and be the expert in the room? Or am I going to be willing to kind of go, you know what? I sampled it. It's not my flavor. I'm going to back off and I'm going to focus on the niche that I've really grown and taken control over. And that's a tough conversation because it's almost like you have to willingly back off and you have to convince yourself that you're not giving up opportunity. You have to convince yourself that you're giving up one opportunity in favor of the one that really blesses you. And that's a hard trail of thought and decision to make.
Yeah, and especially with AI, because it is changing the way stuff is built digitally. And I'm at some point on the AI learning spectrum, and it's not advanced. It's more towards the beginner end, probably for myself. But it's like calling, and there's a fear in me that says, Toby, you need to invest the next 8 weeks learning AI deeply, or else your business is gonna fail. That's a real fear I carry every day. And yet, I don't see business being affected by AI at all right now in my business. Some businesses, sure, but not mine.
That's the dichotomy of the conversation that we're in, if I'm using these words correctly. I was on a show just yesterday with Spencer Foreman from WP Launchify, and in front of other plugin developers on the panel, he said, I can use my AI friend Fernando to code anything I want inside WordPress as the central box so that I don't even need plugins anymore. I can replace all of your products, in minutes with me and Fernando. Now, I am not at that level of AI, right? Obviously, he thinks he is. But that really makes you start thinking like, wow, am I really behind? Like I just mentioned, all these plugins I pay subscriptions for. Am I silly for paying subscriptions for those? But in the end, I'd have to pay for the AI credits to develop all that crud anyway. And then I would have to like supervise it and make sure it stayed compatible with updates and maintain it, when I would rather offload that to the plugin developer anyway. So like you said, if I ignore this and I just stay the path and I stay with my niche and what's developing revenue for my agency today, I don't believe AI is really going to affect that pathway to revenue. And in fact, when I pass away and die, I can pass this down to somebody. And I believe they've still got another 15, 20 years of consistency behind that. And people think I'm being overly optimistic, but I'm also thinking that I'm helping enterprise clients come off of platforms that they invested in 25, 30 years ago. So what makes me think that what I'm building them today, they're not going to stick with for 15, 18, 20 years?
Yeah. And I think one thing you and I have the advantage of is being old and having been through many cycles of this fear thing into
Yeah.
where like I still fear every day. I fear for my business and livelihood. But that's been the case for 19 years. That has
Yeah.
not changed. That's been consistent. Um, and here's an example that happened today. Actually happened yesterday. Somebody emails me. They're a maintenance client of the Mighty Mo's where we update their plugins, patch bugs and stuff, do security work. They said, and we also have a hosting contract with them. And so they emailed us and said, hey, we've been having a lot of downtime. And I was like, oh, well, let me look into this. I
Surprise,
and
surprise.
spent an hour looking into it. And I finally got to the DNS level. I said, hey, I think the issue might be that you have this DNS record pointed at WP Engine. And they go, yeah, we're hosted at WP Engine. I'm like, well, why do we have a hosting contract with you? And so turns out they 2 months ago they switched to let's change it. They switched to a big hosting provider,
Yeah.
one of the world's biggest. 2 months ago they switched there, um,
They've had problems ever since.
and all the problems they were describing was that hosting provider. And so you know what's going to happen? They're coming back to me. I'm a human. I've been emailing with them. They're going to pay me another migration fee to migrate from Big Host back to the Mighty Mo. And their uptime is going to be great again. And, so yeah, does this big hosting company, are they more cutting edge? Do they use more AI? Sure. Do they suck? Sure.
Well, I don't want to say publicly WP Engine sucks. I'm not
No, they
looking
don't.
for
They
that
don't.
fight.
Actually, they don't suck. I'm sorry. They don't suck. Um,
But did they meet the client's
did,
expectations?
exactly.
No, they did
And
not.
and by the way, their uptime was 99.8%, which equals about 30 hours over the last 3 months. So,
Well, yeah, and the client apparently only checks them during the downtime.
well, yeah, and the reality is the client never noticed it down because it always went down at like midnight, 1 a.m., which it's clear that there's some hosting thing happening at those hours every
Yeah.
day. And but yeah, like so they had an uptime monitor that figured it out for them. And so like this is the question really, that it's kind of a question of when to say no and what boundaries you put up for you and your business. So Kurt, like what are you currently saying no to that, and maybe you have a specific tooling or something or a specific thing, maybe it's AI related. Like what are you saying no to actively that hopefully will open up other possibilities for your business?
Well, I have said no to a lot of self-taught, self-proclaimed vibe coders that wanted to work with me to build something that they thought was awesome. I do the discovery call and I'm like, look, if you want to pay me by the hour and this thing's open-ended and I just keep sending you invoices every week and you keep sending me money, we can have that conversation. But I don't I don't think you're ready to go down this path. I don't think you're there. And so we've turned away a bunch of work where people wanted to, they want to have that negotiation. They want to back you into a corner where you're going to say, "Oh no, I'm going to create you this multi-million dollar product with information that you've given me that doesn't work." Um, I see I see the red flag on that every day, and we have turned a few of those down. Um, but by the same token, here we are on the other side of that conversation. I want to have conversations about being at the front of the pack and looking at new things and looking for bigger projects. Um, Lately, we've been saying yes to a lot of small projects, and I got to be honest with you, small projects don't carry, even if the margins are good, they don't carry a lot of revenue. And so that's getting to be like I have to start monitoring myself in that regard and go, you know what, maybe I need to pass on a couple of these smaller projects and get off my duff and sell bigger jobs.
Yeah, because the main problem in owning any business is new customers. And so the more higher value per customer, the better a business you're going to run in theory, or the more options you have. And so we have this struggle too. And we're tracking our sales metrics this year, and we are not meeting our targets at present. And the problem isn't sales. We're actually getting lots of sales, but they're smaller. They're not the average
Yeah.
number that we need. And so that's a problem. And there are lots of ways to solve that, by the way. We could charge more. Let's just start there. Like whatever the
We can
margin
start
is,
there.
let's double that. And maybe that then we need, the same amount generates twice as much revenue.
I've done again, and I always think it's interesting to point this out. We've gotten comments on this, so obviously they like that we point this out. You and I have taken two very different pathways. You have employees, and you operate more like CEO, sales general manager kind of person, and I'm more of a contractor dude, which would be more like a solopreneur's mindset. Um, my error, even though I love it, I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of corporate training, a lot of stuff that is me where I have to be there. I don't have someone to delegate or pass to for those things. Like when I sell a corporate training session, I'm not going to say, hey, don't worry, one of our trainers will show up next Tuesday and fill the slot. I say, I will see you on Tuesday. Um, that makes it hard for me to multiply myself, right? And so I have been taking, and it's through my interactions with you actually, I've been taking steps to go, you know what? I've got these really cool young people in my town. I need to bring a couple of those onto my team and transition a few of these things that I do so that I can do the things I really love, like the public speaking, coaching, and training. I love doing it. But I really need to optimize the stuff that I don't have to do.
Yeah. One thing that I've been getting more comfortable with, and I'm still not at all comfortable with, that's really letting the team create the processes, my team. And so I was deeply involved. Well, I basically created and continue to maintain our website development and design processes to some extent. However, um, our design process specifically has been really taken over by our project manager, and that's been great. Um, we are also one thing. This is like there's here's I guess the point is like the smaller the team, the more complexity tax there is for the more complex you are, the smaller the harder it is. So like if you have a bigger team, you can be a little more complex in your offering, and you don't have to standardize it as much probably,
Yeah.
because there's like just more people to pick up the slack on the the messiness. And by the way, every company is messy, every agency,
Every one of them.
regardless of how polished they look, even these giant companies, they're not they're not as pretty on the inside as they are on the outside. um but I always think like, and this is tough because we have been growing over the last couple of years at the Mighty Mo, and there's a chaos that comes with growth that doesn't feel great. It feels really messy, and we're slowly like getting better at taking that chaos and putting it into processes, but it doesn't feel good while it's chaos.
Well, earlier you had phrased that as like the hidden cost of complexity. And that's like the perfect phrase because even if you have people on your team to delegate to, and you said you let the team develop processes, those processes, it takes time and energy to develop them. It takes time and energy to document them. It takes time and energy to share them and dare I say approve. I don't know if approve is part of the process there for you, but all of that is like this hidden cost. You're building this. Like everything that we do at Manana No Mas, and I think I've shared this with you before, I'll put my son on a Zoom call with me and we'll go through whatever the process is. This is how we start a new hosting package on the server. This is how we reserve URLs. This is how we install WordPress. This is how we add Lifter LMS to WordPress. This is how, and we take all these screen shares that we do in a Zoom call together and we make them lessons as part of a course that's in the back end of Manana No Mas. So that A, when I hire people, I can say, take these lessons and you'll know what to do because this is how we do things at Manana no Mas. Or when I decide to sell this thing, I'm going to be able to say our processes are fully documented with this video tutorial series and it's part of the website.
I think let's talk about the Swiss Army knife agency. The idea that like you say yes to everything basically, and we've all been there, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a necessary part of growing when you're a small agency. Initially, we'll say not once you get developed and you have clients, it's less of an issue. But um, how do you position your agency? Let's say we're talking about somebody who's new and they're trying to position themselves. Maybe the solution is not to, but how do you deal with this problem? Like you you don't quite know where you're going because you haven't had enough clients, and the clients will define where you're going regardless of what you hope. They're going to determine it for you because you need to follow the money.
Because you're either going to do it or you're going to refer somebody that's going to become whether you want them to be a partner or not, they are, right? Because you're sharing a project, or you're going to contract it if you don't do it internally. And then contracting always comes with this weird, like, is the relationship secure? And I hate to say it that way because the difference between an employee and a contractor, there is no difference. They can leave, they can, they could still happen, right? You could still lose that person. But it's just the feeling, right? The environment. And so culturally speaking, if I do something internally and it becomes part of the menu of my agency, I'm running the risk of becoming this Swiss Army knife. Now, I know that your agency does SEO, and I'm just going to be honest. My agency, we've done SEO a few times, and I've brought in contractors. And what I find is sometimes these contractors, they're not up on all the latest, newest changes Google's rolled out. And especially with these AI summaries and everybody reporting their traffic going down, um, it's I find that people aren't able to really overcome things to a customer's expectations or explain things well. Then I can as the owner of my agency to a degree, but if someone's cutting me big money for SEO and the results are actually going backwards, um, people aren't happy. And so I've sold barely any SEO services in the last year and a half, 2 years. And that's one of those things where I'm like, cutting services. Is this a service I'm willing to cut? And I am willing to cut it because for me, Manana no Mas is all based on getting things done on time and getting things done under a certain budget. And I found that I was unable to perform well with SEO.
hmm I do think part of what can help you as you're starting an agency, and no matter who you're talking to and what they're asking, you're going to try to direct them to what you know best.
Yeah.
And so the stuff that we converse about with our potential clients is probably different from the stuff you talk about, just because we do have an SEO team and we do have a
Yeah.
design team, and you have a design team as well, so you probably talk a little bit about that. But if they ask for AI, we're pretty good about we're very transparent. We share exactly where we're at, and then we direct the conversation back to what we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Let's get away from this topic
yeah,
and go back to something I'm comfortable with.
we had
Well,
a
remember,
sorry, go ahead.
so let's revisit the SEO thing. If I am primarily focused on landing enterprise e-learning clients, most of them don't care about SEO because they're a distributorship that has a dealer network or a retail network, and that's where the referrals come from to consume the content that we put into the learning site. And so they're not marketing to a general audience to try and gain viewers and listeners, right? They already have an audience. And so the SEO on those projects is a 0% requirement. It is, however, when we have clients that are like course creators inside that cultural bubble, those people are like, where's my traffic? How do I get people to see my thing? And I bought $300 in Facebook ads and nobody showed up. It's like, all right, let's coach you through some of this. And then we have a discussion about, is it local? Is it national? Do you need to be on Moz local? Does Google Maps know how to find your building? All those normal conversations. But then that Swiss Army knife thing starts creeping back into the conversation where we're back in business consulting mode, where we're like trying to cover every aspect of their business. When if we've already done the website, we kind of want to focus on the success of that project.
And a lot of the you're totally right. A lot of the conversation in our, let's say, talking headland about agency life is like, do we niche down or do we stay broad? And I always think like the main thing you're a salesperson first. And so
Hopefully.
as a business owner, that's your job, is to make sure that the business can make it till tomorrow. And like I think a lot of the conversations about like, should I niche down? Like if you're kind of asking that, you're probably not at a point where you can ask that. Like because you'll if you're asking it, means you probably don't have a bunch of clients paying you for that already.
Yeah. Yeah. Money does help make the decision easier, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's it makes the decision. I mean,
So
let's be honest here. Like,
let's if I'm trying to like avoid the Swiss Army knife and I'm trying to avoid the, the cost of, the hidden cost of all these things, you have a note in here that I think is really good, and that's productized services versus answering every customer whim on the planet. And I don't think I could agree with you more. Once I discovered the idea of so some people would refer to like multi-tenancy as a platform, right? Multi-tenancy, or some hosts give you the ability to blueprint or websites, right? That to me is uh and you could do it other ways, obviously, right? But I love like hosts that allow you to blueprint something. You go, I want to save this website as a blueprint, and then I can sell that website instantly to anybody that wants that kind of package. That food trucks. I got have a food truck blueprint. So if I get a food truck client, I just go boop, and then I go, okay, your logo, a picture of your truck, and then you can change this menu to match your menu. This is how you do that. Have a nice day.
and I think like one thing that's often lost in this conversation about productizing services, what you described is one aspect. Like, yeah, like you have a tool set that you use, but I also think your process is your product. And so
Yeah.
when we go into pitch meetings, a lot of times, well, I shouldn't say a lot of times, every single time we go into a pitch meeting, our process is what we're selling.
Yep.
We're not selling the product. They already know we can create a good product. So we're saying, here's what you can expect as you work with us on, week 1, here's what it's going to look like. Week 2, here's what it's going to look like. And then week 14, we're going to launch. And there's going to be a few minutes of downtime while we do Let's Encrypt. Or if you don't want Let's Encrypt, we'll fix that. We'll buy it, that sort of thing. And so we're really selling a process. But by the way, our process is very well documented and it's still messy. There's no, you probably know this from fixing cars. I'm sure it's, yeah, sure, change that carburetor, no problem. But how many out of 10 are a weird scenario? Probably quite a few.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so your pitch process is the same. Have you I have really begun to use a certain set of plugins and tools as my crutch. I really have. I've become an absolute expert on like 6 or 7 pretty deep dynamic plugins, and I got to tell you it has forged the pathway for my agency.
Hmm.
I'm not having conversations about, hey, which calendar tool could we pick out of the repository? It's like, we're not having that conversation. This is the event tool that we use at Mañana No Mas. This is the LMS we use at Mañana No Mas. And sometimes they go, well, I want to try something different. We can have that conversation, but you're not going to fall into my standard, profile package for that.
Yeah, and this is a good point. You as an agency owner and the deliverer of the work, like people are coming to you to make these decisions. And so even if there's a hot new thing out there, we still stick with what we know is solid and works well. For example, there's one form plugin we use that we just know really well. We trust it. It's been around a long time. And even though there are new form plugins that probably do things fancier or something like that or give more options, we're just like, you know what? We know this well. We can execute and deliver on this really quick. And so part of what you're describing is simplifying the tech stack, fewer platforms, fewer plugins, equals in theory fewer headaches for you and for your clients. And there's a real cost to managing too many tools.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have,
Not just the credit card alone, but just the,
right.
the brain and people power.
Yeah, maybe that's the bigger thing because, and the more headaches you have internally, especially, and this is the same if you have contractors that, you can frustrate contractors with complexity that, so that next time they're like, I'm busy. Like,
That does kind of hurt sometimes.
yeah,
Because you send out, hey, I got a new project for you, and they're like,
right.
busy.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And part of this too is simplifying the client experience. If you have a solid tech stack, we never talk tech with clients. Like you're saying, like we tell them, we have a standard set of tools. I sent an email today. They were asking that same email I was talking about earlier. They were asking about our tool set for migrating. I said, my response was literally, we have a standard set of tools and every site is different. So for example, on this hosting platform, we know there are a certain set of problems we're going to deal with. And that was fine. They don't need any more. And if they ask, I don't give it to them, or maybe I would if they asked kindly or the right way, if I knew it was a tech person, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always find that to be, and this is going to sound sideways. It's going to sound, I don't mean it to sound sideways, but if you're an agency and you're listening, you probably need to hear it. If you are overly generous with how you describe your process and your tools, don't be surprised when you say, like, if you were to say, oh, yeah, we always use WP all import and we blah, 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 right? And then 2 weeks goes by and you're like, hey, I sent you guys that proposal. I thought we were moving that website. And they're going to be like, oh, we had one of our internal guys do it. We just wanted to get it done. And you're like, so I told you how to do it. And that's $700 or $1,000 or whatever out of your pocket. You got to be careful with how you share what you're building, how it's built. All people need to know is that you're the expert. They've got a problem, you've got a solution, and it costs this much, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, there was an agency in town that, so we're hosting a website for a company in town that's it's a basic marketing site, really, but they are a company that requires a lot of legal compliance. And so we're hosting it and we've had to do a lot of custom work on the server to close ports and all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff. There's this other agency in town that really does what the Mighty Mo does, but for whatever reason, our client contracted with them and not us, and that's fine. But this agency clearly doesn't know what they're doing, like, because they were trying to stage a site, and we have a staging site, and it wasn't like that. It was just like they couldn't figure out how to get the content from their like local environment to the server, and so I ended up teaching this agency how to do this like rather basic thing, and um, it it was a little bit frustrating for me because I'm like, yeah, I'm giving away this business, but it was kind of weird because I'm also the host and like technically I'm providing that service. I'm with you though. I've lost a lot of early on, particularly. I try not to share any specific, and this is that you're right. One reason not to share specifics of your tech stack is it kind of cheapens the stack. Because even if you use WP All Import, which is a great plugin, and technically it's like straightforward, it can be very tricky to do properly. And
Yeah. Hey, where'd all my pictures go? How come the formatting looks weird?
yeah, where's this thing? And like you get blamed for that. And we've talked about this before. Like you recommended WP All Import and it sucks. And you're like, no, it's great. You just used it wrong. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really tough one. And so I have another one. So we just buried a neighbor today, so maybe my brain's on death, right? But we also, very coincidentally, had a client that said, I'm suffering some very severe health issues and I'll no longer be taking care of this website. And as I'm reading the email, I'm thinking, oh, well, we lost another one, right? But then she writes, someone else is going to be taking over the website and they want to do a rebranding and they want to change the URL. You know, how would you suggest this happens? We're open to suggestions. And I find that's a very interesting thing, right? Because that comes down to kind of like what we're talking about today. Do I want to keep that account? Do I want to work with a new client in charge of that account? What has been the lifetime value of that account where it stands now? Do I just transfer it and never meet this person? Take this for what you want. This is what I responded with. I said, hey, I'm so sorry to hear about your health problems, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't aware. We can make this as seamless as possible between you and the new owner. What I would suggest is that they reserve their new URL unless they already have. They can do it with us or on their own. And then we can just point that whole package to that URL for them and make it a seamless transition. Let them select the appropriate hosting package from our menu, and they'll get an onboarding call with us before we transfer the site to make sure we meet all their expectations. And what that means is I'm not transferring the website to someone I haven't met yet. Like if they're a client of mine, if they're going to be a client of mine, I want to make sure that I meet them, Zoom call with them, let them know what our other services, what our support features might be, things that they're not aware of, things that the other client didn't take advantage of, and then kind of blow that out. But at the same time, like you're saying, got to be careful not presenting myself as the Swiss Army knife to this new person.
Hmm. Yeah, because I always think every conversation is a sales conversation, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're salesy. Just that, like, whatever you say is communicating something. Like, if you're talking about SEO, they're going to remember, oh, he does SEO. If you're talking about something else, they're going to remember that. I as we transition here to the end of our podcast, one thing I'm curious about is the psychology of kind of shifting from like growth equals bigger to growth equals something else. Because as we're talking about like streamlining and AI coming in to change all our processes, it might get leaner. Like leaner, meaner might be a better description of where we're at culturally and with business stuff. But leaner can also be bigger. Like it can also mean growth. So how are you kind of redefining success? Maybe it's easier operations. Maybe it's and one thing I track is credit card fees as like a positive metric. Did I pay more credit card fees this year? Great. It means business is better than last year. It's like an easier metric sometimes to track. You could track credit card transactions and say, let's say you're trying to move more to paper checks. You could say, how many credit card transactions? So it doesn't always have to be bottom line, it can be other things. And success could be there have been years where I just tracked success based on A, is the business still standing? B, did I get more vacation time this year compared to last year?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so weird because that thought as a business owner to me is completely fluid. And that's why I think it's so important. Like journaling is part of my daily regimen because I want to have a consistency in thought rather than trying to keep up with my emotions up and down, up and down. There are times where Friday afternoon rolls around, I fire up the grill, I have an adult beverage, maybe a cigar on a nice day, play with the dog in the backyard, and it's like, Bob's your uncle. This is just a great day, right? And then there's moments where, and it just happened this week, where I was like, I'm looking at the balances on credit cards, I'm looking at revenue, I'm looking at invoices that haven't been paid yet, and all at once I'm going, the hell am I doing? Why I should just go get a job. This is what's happening. And then the next day I'm like, why was I so doomsdayish yesterday? Things are great. I'm working from home. I got this nice little workspace. I'm on 5 podcasts a week. It's like things are great. So if I were to depend on emotions and not actually kind of journal and track my way through to measure my growth in with real KPIs, um, I don't think I'd be the same person.
Yeah,
The
love it.
psychology of it's rough because, I don't know, I think I have undiagnosed, adult ADHD or something, right? Like, I think a lot of us do.
Hmm.
Maybe some of them are diagnosed, right? But my emotions are way up and down. I'm consistent. Like when I communicate in podcasts or meet with clients, they always say, "Oh, Kurt, you're so consistent," or "You're so informative," or they say nice things. But behind the scenes, man, I'm like a duck. I'm super smooth on top of the water. Under the water, my little feet are going like crazy, right? And that's just the way that it's the way that I've been. That's the way I've grown.
Yeah, love it. Well,
How
let's
about
wrap up.
you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm this year, part of what I'm doing is putting a little more focus on my personal health and in addition to growing the business. And it's not that I've been unhealthy or anything like that, but I signed up for a gym And so part of my thing, I don't even have an official metric yet, or maybe I never will, but it's like, am I going to the gym enough? Like, and so I did yoga this morning. And by gym, yeah, not not buff like you, Kurt. um, but am I going to the gym? And all that means is like I was spent an hour working on my own health. And so that's a metric I'm kind of tracking that I think is important. Am I going to events with kids? My kids? Am I doing things with my kids? And again, I don't have like a hard metric, but it's kind of like, is the business supporting these things or not? And those are things that I kind of informally track. And this year I'm paying particular attention to them.
When you die, there'll be a slideshow playing in whatever the room is, and it's gonna be pictures of you with your family, your kids, your guitar, right? There's gonna be very few pictures of you standing by yourself next to a computer and a keyboard.
That my quote will be, I wish I would have worked harder. Farewell, world.
But that is a great way to end this. Folks, this has been another amazing show with the Agency Action Show. It is through your comments that we have the inspiration to even keep doing it. So thanks for the comments. Thanks for the emails. Thanks for all of that positive feedback. If you have questions, comments, concerns, we encourage you to send those in or hit us in the comments. We see them. Like, subscribe, all of that. Toby, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Toby Crines, that's Cryns, or you can go to the Mighty Mo, TheMighttyMo.com, and we have a contact form on there. How about you, Kurt? Where can we find you?
Mañana No Mas and LinkedIn. I'm the only Kurt Von Otten there, easy to find. Folks, we'll see you next time on the Agency Action Show.